Welcome to the Tourism AI podcast, where we talk about all things at the intersection of artificial intelligence and tourism. And today I'm joined by my good friend Andreas out of the Napa Valley, who runs a digital marketing agency, Next Gen Marketing, and also now has partnered with CIPR Communications and Tourism AI Network much more fulsomely. And actually, we recently launched a new website together, Next Gen Destination Marketing. Lots of exciting stuff to talk about. Andreas, thanks for joining.
Peter, thanks for the invitation. Yeah, it's a interesting market that the dynamics that we see, and I think the next gen destination marketing website is supposed to provide solutions in this area and help destination organizations, operators, with all the changes that are coming.
Yeah. So I think let's talk about that a little bit. Like obviously, you and I have been talking a lot about all the things that are happening. We've been talking to some destinations and some tourism leaders and chamber leaders and others, and there's a lot of things happening and a lot of things changing. So obviously, we're interested, I think, collectively in the where marketing is going, specifically aspect of things. So, you and I have talked a little bit about the changing world of search. And I know it's an area you've dug into a little bit more deeply than I have. So, what do you see for destinations and for tourism operators as, kind of where they need to be thinking, where their heads need to be at when it comes to search and being found online?
Yeah. Yeah, search in general, the traditional search, if you go to Google or Bing, is part of the customer journey. You have an idea, you wanna learn about visiting, stay in our local example, visiting Napa Valley. So the first thing you want to learn is what can I do? What are hotels I can stay at? You're gonna start to be aware of brands, and you go into the awareness stage where you really start to compare, let's say, hotels or wineries, and then you make a decision at the end based on information you find on a website from a hotel or from a winery, and then you book whatever you do. So this sales funnel has been with us since, I would say close to 20 years now. But what is happening with AI searches, and when AI is being used to build an itinerary or to create an answer, which what are the best hotels in Napa Valley, AI actually goes out and does a lot of the search by AI and then creates the answer. So a lot of the work that we have done in the traditional search, which aims to the 10 blue links on the Google search result page or Bing page, and we hopefully click one and end up on the destination or the hotel website, let's stay as a hotel example, is changing now. Because all of this work is done by AI. AI calls it as a fan out. So when you put in a query, AI actually creates additional questions, and what comes back is going to be the basis of the answer. And what is really important to be part of this answer. Because there's a couple of things. If you're not part of this answer, you might be great in traditional search results, but AI is not surfacing you in the answer. So you lose a big opportunity. That's number one. You might never show up. And what's really important to understand the dynamic to show up. Because what's happening in the background is our consumer behavior is changing. When in the traditional way, you search for something, then you get the results, and you click a link, you go to websites, continue your search, and you make up your opinion, and then you make a buying decision at the end. The sales funnel potentially collapse to one chat because AI is doing the work for you. AI is going to these websites, AI is surfacing an answer, and AI is providing you a link to the final answer, booking, and these kind of things. So there's a huge change of dynamic that will influence user behaviors, and it will influence how, as a brand, you show up in these answers and have an opportunity to get a booking, get whatever happens.
So what do you think brands need to do? Sort of what is the change that needs to happen for companies from moving from SEO to a different type of I guess sort of approach to this whole thing?
Yeah, the good news is SEO always brings you 50% the way. If you have a good SEO practice running on your website, you have a good structure of the content, you have a good, setup of the website. Now you have built some authority for a topic with the search engines. So that's already there. The additional thing that needs to happen is really thinking about the questions that people might ask in a AI mode of search or with ChatGPT or Perplexity to anticipate the questions, anticipate the fan out questions that AI is creating to get a more complete picture, and now thinking about what content do I need to have on my website that is helping AI to learn information that can answer the question. So you need to go a little bit in a forward thinking way and anticipate what people are asking, and then have your content on the website structured in a way that it's easy for AI to find the answers so that you're going to be part of it. So you have to anticipate a little bit in this area, and there's lots of testing required.
Yeah. You know what's interesting about what you're saying here, Andreas, is I did a podcast quite a while ago with Tourism Kelowna, and they were talking about, the chatbot that they added to their website and the kind of two-way dialogue that chatbot started creating with their team internally. And, the comment that sort of always resonated with me is, man, it really surprised me with how many different ways people asked questions, how many different kinds of questions people asked. And so to me, it's sort of like, I can get your kind of opinion on this, but like, obviously putting a chatbot on your website that people can interact with and ask questions to, there's some risk involved in terms of maybe it won't know how to answer the question. But there is some value in understanding the questions that are coming in, right? So obviously, the more you can anticipate, the better. But also having a good chatbot that can sort of interact and give you feedback and information might be another strategy. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. I think we as consumers will get more and more used to the power of AI chats. It will become, like Google, when Google started, when searches started, it became a default action for us to Google. We wanted to find some information. I think as consumer behavior is changing and also driven by businesses that need to be on the AI train, you're going to get used to it. And you're going to learn what the power is. You're going to learn how to prompt AI in the right way. So you might even learn what is a big trend that you talk to AI, and AI is doing the work after communication with you and these kind of things. So what's really happening is our user interface is changing with this as well. And I was just reading an article, Eric Schmidt, one of the founders of Google, said we're going to enter an area where we have a complete changing user interface, which is going to be voice. So
Yes.
so take that for a moment. It's not going to happen overnight, but our user interface will become more a chat-based interface. And then the chatbot either displays the information, comes back with the answer, and then we're going to decide about next steps. I think this is a big picture movement in the background. So having a chatbot on your website is very important, especially if you have a lot of information. We're building big websites with lots of information, non-profits or uh, um, destinations, and this information wants to get found. And the biggest problem today with a traditional search, even if you have something built into your website, it's not as precise and good as we like. If we have a chatbot doing the work to understand our question and to point us to the right information, it will be a really nice user experience. And I think you probably confirm that when people have a chatbot on a website, the engagement and the time spent on the website is actually going up.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. So I was actually just looking at my website statistics on Tourism AI Network website, and I have a chatbot that's not in the bottom right corner. It's a sort of an inline chatbot that looks like a Google search bar right and the home screen. That's the first thing you see. And, it's obviously the middle of summer, so like my website traffic is down, considerably just seasonal because of the season, but my engagement is through the roof. It's actually really interesting. So I'm going to be digging a little bit deeper into that because like my engagement just keeps going up and up and up and up. And it's like, wow, okay. This is fascinating. And so, the other interesting thing about what you're talking about, and I'm with you 100% in terms of like voice is where it's all going. And I, remember, and I show this in some of my keynote presentations, but Microsoft at their Build conference about 2 years ago showed this, this interaction this guy had with this like website. It was sort of like the websites of the future. And he was talking into basically into his computer with an e-commerce website that was a hiking website, and he was sort of like he literally pulled up his shoe and showed the camera his shoe and said, "I'm going hiking. It's going to be cold. Is this a good shoe?" And the basically the website looked at his shoe and said, "No, you need something a little more robust because it was sort of like whatever." And then actually like put and he's like, I'm in a hurry, so can you just pick the right option for me?" And it went and picked the right option, put it in the cart, and then checked it out for him. You know what I mean? All hands free, video and audio, and I was like, man, that is where it's all going. And so that is the future. Like every destination is going to have to start preparing for. And to your point, it's not overnight. But I also think about this future, which is kind of here, but also like again going to be developing. But Meta's Ray-Ban glasses. Imagine, you're a traveler and you're in destination and you're walking around and oh gee, that looks like a great restaurant. We should go there later. And you just look at it with your Ray-Ban glasses and you just tell them, hey, can you book that for me? For 7 o'clock for what I mean?
Yeah,
um, like what a different world that is if you start painting that picture, right? So these are all things that kind of we have to start thinking about and preparing for. And I think that, if I think about our partnership here, Andreas, and the next gen destination marketing website is like, this is our focus, right? This is really what we want to do. We want to really be the leaders and innovate and sort of be at the forefront of all of this stuff. So, I know you're like me. Read and absorb every single piece of content and information you possibly can, everywhere you can, as quickly as possible. And then we have teams behind us, obviously, sort of trying to figure out how to implement it, right? Yeah, sort of, kind of painting that picture. What do you see as sort of a bit of a timeline for this evolution? And probably a more important question, what do DMOs and tourism organizations have to do today to start preparing for that future?
yeah, yeah. So it will take a little bit of time, but I think, and I had the pleasure to be in several big innovations over my years in business in high tech. The time will be way shorter and the adoption will be higher because it's such an easy interface. A consumer, to stay in this example, is going to experience the power of AI in the daily world. You're searching for something. Oh, let's try this. I have tons of examples where I was impressed what answers I got back, and it really got me thinking how this will impact the behavior of every one of us. So it's still a little bit early days, but it is very important to think about what is the content of my website, how is my website interacting. And I'm talking about websites because it is still a major interface where we find our information, and websites will stay. Maybe the look and feel of websites going to be different in 5 years, but websites actually have two main tasks today. Number one is a place where the content sits. Website technology is also called content management system because they manage all the content, and content is required for the AI answer in the future. So that will stay. And then the second function is have a really good, nice converting user interface, which is easy to use. Today it's a website as we know it. In the future, it might be a chatbot sitting on the website. It might be a chatbot that is my personalized chatbot that is doing tasks for me. If you really
Yes.
think about the agent capabilities and all kinds of things. So fundamentally, the information holding function is still there. Now we need to provide the information to whatever we use in the future. And that's really what we can prepare today. We can think about what do I need to have as an information up to date and also as an underlying technology to make it easy for these AI systems to find my information and to use it. So it's a technology and it's also a very big content. How relevant is my content for these questions that people are asking?
Yeah, and I think it starts with tracking. I know both you and I are starting to implement sort of, AI referrals into our reporting and things like that. So, understanding kind of what is referring traffic to a website from AI, from AI tools and understanding what queries and that's a really critical component to it, right? Because again, you and I are people that are sort of kind of at the forefront of this, trying to like figure it out. That tracking is just as important to us as it is to our end clients, because that starts to give us insights into what, consumer behavior and how people are using these tools, and then it probably even for me, it's like I'm really starting to think, is there ways to track kind of like agentic to agent to agent communications, because that, like to your point, is what's coming soon. So there's to me, a huge tracking component to all of this that I think, again, you and I through next gen destination marketing are really going to be focusing our efforts on sort of how do we make that better? How do we really kind of understand what's going on in the back end, that type of thing, right? And I think the other piece to me is, I've had this conversation with a few people, is just how, just think about how search is changing. Now we're really in a world of long tail search, right? Because, I don't know how you like, I literally like to talk to AI on a walk with my headphones, and I'll sometimes talk for 4 minutes,
Yeah.
and that's my search query. You know what I mean? That's a very, very different search environment. than just typing in something to Google. And it's gonna become that because of obviously when you're more audio, you're just people are more verbose and they're gonna talk more, right? So yeah, kind of what are your thoughts on that piece in terms of that long tail piece and sort of how I know we've started to track some of these things, but what more can we do? And to me, I guess is for a lot of anybody listening to this is to me at a minimum, if you need help tracking, come to us. But like where else can we go with that in your mind?
Yeah, so it has always been the case, even in traditional search, that long tail keyword phrases where, when the user makes up their mind and they're going to become more and more concrete, the search phrases are getting longer. And the longer the search phrases are, the more transactional they become because you're already looking at something very concrete. But one of the things, I do also AI training, deep dives and help people to just do the right things. And one of my first slides is forget Googling. Because what Google has told us successfully over the years, and we have used it as a major information source, is ask questions with 3 to 5 words. If you use 3 to 5 words and put them into AI, you're not getting a good answer. AI needs to understand the context. AI needs to understand what you want to be, what you're envisioning. So talking to it can be very successful, as you said, Peter. It's definitely the better you can frame your question, the better you can, give information to AI, the better the answer will be. And there's one really important aspect. I had a personal example. This summer, my wife and I, we spent 2.5 days in Athens, and I tried to build an itinerary the usual way via Google. And I got so frustrated because I clicked on links and I ended somewhere else and said, I'm going to use ChatGPT. And I had a prompt which was probably half a page long. I described when we arrive. I said, here's where we're staying. This is what I envision. I remember a restaurant in Greece, in Athens, which was really nice. Can you find it? And I need a tour operator. And it came back with an amazing 2.5 day itinerary for us, including some breakpoints where we have a lunch here and there and with recommendations. And I more or less used the links in there and directly booked the tour guide for the Acropolis and these kind of things. This is what's changing. So the long tail keyword phrases is the first step, but it goes way beyond. It
Maybe.
goes way beyond because we have to put more context around it.
Yeah, and you and I kind of talked about before we hit record here. I was telling you about this company Kismet that's sort of doing some work around this for hotels to help kind of we don't want to get technical, but creating vectorized databases and the very technical solution. And I think that for me, there's an opportunity for DMOs here also. Because if you think about a DMO website, it has a lot. A DMO website has not only, kind of all of the, tourism operators and hoteliers and all the sort of members, if you will, or stakeholders listed on their website usually, but usually they're organized in things to do, places to eat, like usually the structure of the website's really good, and then usually they're writing a lot of content and telling a lot of stories about the destination, right? So it's sort of like a holistic picture of things to do in the destination, right? And so yeah, what are your thoughts on kind of the role of destinations and destination websites in this world? Is there an opportunity for destinations to think differently about their role in supporting the operators in their region?
Yeah, so one thing I think which is very important for destination, they have always played the rule. If you think about the sales funnel, and you go from awareness, consideration, and you to do a booking or whatever, they have played a really important role to learn about a destination, things to do, hotels. That's one of their main purpose to really represent the destination and promote it. So this function will still exist, but it will be represented by AI. And this is where now the information that is being available on the destination website plus the functions will change. So the information, which has always been a lot about, as I said, things to do and these kind of nice blogs that maybe create itineraries and all kinds of stuff. When you think about the example in Athens that I just brought, this was a source of information that was used from somewhere to build an itinerary. So you want to be in this area. You want to be referenced as a source where this information is coming from. But it's going to go further. AI potentially reduces the sales funnel to one chat because you're already getting an answer. Now let's get to the function, okay, how do I make sure that my information guides people to a booking? And this is where I think DMOs have an opportunity. They could either be an active part in this booking, or they need to make sure that they have the right references for their hotels, restaurants, or partners that these be surfaced as well in the AI answer.
Yeah, so I'm gonna kind of phrase this in a way and get your thoughts on this. But obviously, in the hotel booking space, we have OTAs or online travel agencies, and they sort of play this type of role online, and they've successfully played this kind of role, and they've, I would say, leveraged it very well from a financial perspective. Now, obviously, the hoteliers don't really love giving away that revenue to them, but it's sort of there's no option, right? I think, do you see, first of all, a role for a DMO almost to kind of consider itself as a on OTA potentially in this sort of future? Or is that actually an idea maybe worth exploring? Like that to me is like a next gen destination marketing sort of maybe project we're coming up with here that maybe would be worth at least exploring with a few DMOs and to see if that's possible. Do you see that as a possibility?
There's definitely, even in the traditional search world today, there are definitely ranking competitors. The destination marketing website and let's say a TripAdvisor or other travel companies, they are definitely ranking competitors. So what's important is these nationwide companies might not represent your destination so well. So it's really differentiating on good information concerning the destination and then building a system where the information is not only used as part of the answer, where the information is also that you provide is used to drive a booking, maybe directly with a hotel, maybe you offer something. It's always complicated to get all the booking information for several hotels right and all kinds of things. And these are systems that the big travel companies have built. But I think there is a very meaningful role in this area. And I think that's what needs to get explored. I don't have a definite answer
Sure.
what would be the right way, but I see an opportunity there.
Yeah. And you know what I like about this concept is that the destination obviously has a role beyond marketing because they're the stewards of the destination. They have a destination development component. They're really and you and I have talked about sort of in the tourism space, we in some cases we have DMOs, in some cases we have chambers, sometimes it's economic development officers. So it's actually tourism doesn't necessarily always with one entity or there's not one entity focused on tourism. And you and I have talked about sort of can we redefine a sector here and kind of put a label on a sector and start talking about it a little bit more holistically. And I actually been doing a little bit of work on this, and so I almost call it I think the name that's resonating for me is like the local prosperity sector because it's a bunch of organizations, lots of nonprofits, and they're looking at local prosperity like a destination, and there's a tourism component, there's a quality of life component, there's a many components to it. And so to me, the concept of a destination playing the role of an OTA really supports the notion of local prosperity and what kind of destination do we want and what kind of traveler do we want, and that's not a role that necessarily these OTAs play. They're just there to make money, right? And no offense to them, but they're not located in the location. They don't have a deep connection, to the fiber of the community. They don't know what the bigger picture plans are, and they also don't connect the dots too much beyond just the hotels and maybe the car rental companies, whereas the destinations have all of the stakeholders. So, I think it's a really interesting concept to explore. I really would like to maybe spend some time going down this path a little bit more and I guess maybe just get your thoughts on, local prosperity sector. That's the name that's resonating with me. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I had the opportunity this year to speak at a couple of conferences at the keynote about AI, but most of these conferences were about the economic development in a region. You had people that were talking about, workforce development and talking about what are the impacts on a bigger picture that are happening. And then I talked about what AI impact is going to be on businesses and jobs, what for employees and these kind of things. There's a couple of really big changes happening on all kinds of dimensions that is impacting the local economy. And I think it's really important that the local stakeholders are coming together and building a plan for the economic development.
Hmm.
The destination organizations are a major part of it. If you're in a destination, you want to get visitors. You want to attract visitors. That really helps the hotels, restaurants to make their revenue, and that has a bigger impact for the infrastructure and all kinds of things. So it's a big driver. But I think it's more important than ever to really get together as a local group and really build a plan that can be executed. because it's not going to be easier. The destination organizations have had a really important role in the sales funnel in the past. I call it, I even say in the past, it's still there. But when we made our mind, there was a study that Google did, I think 5 years ago, explaining the sales funnel and how a lady who was looking for some cosmetic products did 150 touch points just to buy a product. And how she was touching different channels, YouTube and whatever, review channels to get to the point, okay, I'm going to buy here. And then she went to the store. As I said, these activities might be down to one chat. And that's so important to have the authority. And there's a way to measure it. And typically the destination websites, as an example, they have a pretty good authority in Google's mindset. And this is also what AI picks up. So to maintain this authority and provide the right information as part of the answer needs to be guided by you as a destination, so that you bring at the end the consumer to the right conclusion.
Yeah, and even beyond that, as you're talking, I'm thinking about, in this new world, if we get this AI agentic world where agents are talking to agents, probably it also needs the ability to, the agent will need the ability to take the action on that website and sort of complete the transaction or whatever, which is a sort of a kind of a last mile key thing. So that actually makes me think more about, I think destinations really need to rethink their kind of their role in the ecosystem, if you will. So yeah, I think there's a lot to sort of unpack here and think about. And, maybe what we could do, Andreas, is put together a bit of a, not a working group, but maybe we could do a bit of a sort of a, not a presentation, but sort of a, bring some stakeholders together for a conversation about this. Maybe would be a good sort of approach, right? We can
I like
present
that
some
idea.
things.
I really like that
Yeah,
idea, Peter, because I think we talk to the right people that are thinking the same things. They might not see the implication on the big picture as we see it, because that's what we do day to day. But I think it would be really good to explore and to brainstorm what's happening and what can be done. And everyone is a little bit different, a chamber or destination organization, wherever they are located. But fundamentally, the big driver is the same.
it
It's
is the same.
AI becoming our main interface in our future life. Period.
Yeah, for sure. And what I'll say is that, if you think about whether it's economic development chambers and everything, even their interests are all aligned in the sense of like, you're trying to bring people into your location, and you're trying to create economic activity from those people, right? Like whether it's a chamber, whether it's a destination, whether it's an economic development office, right? Whether it's a nonprofit, focused on something else, like fundamentally that's kind of what everybody's trying to do, right? And then also with a good quality of life on top that we can, you know what I mean, sort of, you know.
What we are experiencing, if you really step back, what we are experiencing is a major change on how in the future we all interact with each other. I'm old enough, grew up and studied and started working without the internet being around. And there was only a phone. And then the internet came. The internet changed the way how we do everything today. It's part of our life, and we couldn't even imagine not having it. I always say, imagine COVID would have happened 30 years earlier without the internet. What would have happened to us as employees, as companies? We only would have had a phone. So AI is the next big step with significant, changes. And I think that it will have these changes because we suddenly got a different interface to knowledge. We have a different way of interacting with an AI chatbot. This will train how we behave, like the internet trained us to switch on the PC in the past, to have our phone now connected all the time. This will happen
Yeah.
just much, much faster.
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting. I think one of my predictions is that we'll probably see more human to human interaction, more in-person interaction. There's other implications that we haven't talked about. For example, you and I are talking about building a tool to help automate, reporting for destinations and other nonprofits as an example. And okay, so if we can build a tool that can suddenly solve, take away 30% of a person's job, and give them time back to go and spend more time with stakeholders and meeting with people and all that kind of, it changes actually even the dynamics of human interaction and travel, and you know what I mean, more conferences, more in-person things, right? Like I think we're going to see a resurgence in that. Do you agree with that as well?
Yes, I think 100%. If you look, and it's definitely true in the marketing field, but I think it's true for everyone. We have so many tasks to do today that are not really the highest level tasks, but they need to get done. So if you can automate some of these things or can delegate it to an AI agent or something like this in the future, that frees up time to do the really valuable work. And I think what will be very valuable as humans in the future is to take the great information that we get from AI, because it's a great source of intelligence and information, but it's not always correct. And that's where we need more time to think about the answers and really digest it and make a decision as a human which direction I want to drive my business or which direction I want to address a task. So this freeing up of time will make us better. I'm not sure how your workday is. Sometimes I said, "Oh my God, I would have loved more time on this, but I had to do these other things." And this will be a big change. And that's, I think, why you and I, we jumped very early on this AI bandwagon and said, number one, it's going to help us to make things simpler. It's going to free up time and it's going to make us better because we have more time for the important thing.
Yeah, it's funny. I always kind of frame it as, technology has also always come with a lot of promise, and it's never really delivered on that promise. And again, I use these anecdotes of like, when the internet came, it was like, oh my God, information is going to become available to everybody. And then, you had this like, this dial up, and it took 5 minutes to get, anything. That was literally my first experience, and I was like, man, this is horrible. Why would anybody want to spend their time doing this, right? And but obviously it evolves and changes. But AI is one of those things where it's like very different, and you get instant understanding and appreciation for what it can do. It's to your point, it just creates a very accelerating effect, and the change to natural language processing and you just using language. I kind of tell people it's like now every single human in the world has the ability to program a computer using just words, right? That's a very fundamental shift. And so I think finally the promise of technology is starting to catch up to what the promise has been. Now, I don't want to sugarcoat it because there's a lot of concerns and there's a lot of things to be worried about. And I'm not all, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened. I am not at all. And in fact, I actually been telling people recently that it's like, sometimes I wake up in the morning and I'm like, should I keep accelerating AI in terms of everything I'm doing, or should I stop everything I'm doing and go start a nonprofit to talk about the dangers of AI? I literally, I'm like on both sides of the spectrum, right? But regardless of that, I mean, is moving forward with or without me. So I'm sort of, we need to obviously figure it out for our clients and for ourselves. But yeah, it's pretty profound, right? If you think about the shifts.
But that's really the human role. That's really the role of the human in all of this. And when cars were invented, people were forecasting in 10 years humanity would die because of the exhaust. And this was in 1920-ish time frame. So when they really picked up, it never happened because we humans found solution to make it better. And this is really what our responsibility is by understanding the technology, understanding the opportunity, but also understanding the threats and making sure that this is always in our mind. Anything you touch today, even traditional surfing on the internet, can be dangerous if you're not careful.
Yeah,
We just learned.
right.
We just learned that what we should do and what we shouldn't do. And it's going to be the same here. It's a little bit overwhelming, I think, for everyone who's not involved. And when I do the trainings, I always like to do a little bit an exercise to give people an opportunity to experience what's possible. And I just had a workshop that I did and was a very simple task, and what people could create in 5, 7 minutes blew their mind. It's not done. A marketing plan in 5 minutes is not done, but you have a lot of information and ideas that you now can bring to the next step. And sometimes when I do, deep research project for a client, competitive research, what I can get in an hour, what would probably have taken me in the past a day. So because I had to manually search and put things together, here I'm getting it brought to me, and now I can digest point by point, is this correct or not? And I can ask additional questions. It's a great buddy to have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it is. Yeah, yeah. No, and maybe we'll have to sort of bring this conversation to a close soon here. But I think maybe what I'll sort of stop with here is I want to leave maybe with a really strong call to action to the, what I'll call the broad-based local prosperity sector, which includes DMOs, kind of tourism associations and organizations, hotel associations, nonprofits, economic development offices, municipalities, chambers of commerce, really organizations that are sort of, largely nonprofit or whatever, made up of business people trying to improve things. I think there's a huge role in general for this sector to play in this conversation because I think if you think about sort of, governments The local level is the one that's got the pulse of the people. These organizations have the pulse of the businesses, right? They all collectively have the pulse of the destination. And so, and I'm actually, I think I mentioned to you, I'm in the process of starting to write a book right now on kind of the role of leaders in AI adoption. And I think I'm going to tailor it specifically to this local prosperity sector, and the really strong role that, because these are community builders at the end of the
Yeah,
day,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
These are people with a community minded sort of frame, and they're there to build community, and they're again back to the conversation about the sort of the concept of a DMO kind of replacing the role of an OTA. They have the community's interest at heart, whereas maybe the OTA doesn't, and I think all of these people in this sector do. And so when you think about the role of AI in society and work, this is a really critical sector, I think, to kind of be thinking about this. And so obviously, you and I speak at a lot of conferences held by these folks, but I think I'd leave this sort of with a strong kind of sort of a shout out to those folks trying to do good work for their local economies, and to start thinking about their role as leaders in this AI conversation. Right? I think it's I think they play they're almost like the glue of society in a lot of ways, these sectors, right? And so I think I'd like to see as much conversation from this group as possible on the future, on where we're going.
yeah. No, I can't. Absolutely right, Peter. And as I said, the conferences we are speaking, they're going in this direction, and I think we are open to help. That's what I told my local folks here, and talked to several people when they think about the economic development. And I said, don't forget to really think hard about AI and how AI will impact what we do here. And so I'm part of a couple of these discussions to help to help people to understand the potential, because it's so confusing what you hear on AI, about AI, is so conflicting, confusing, and how dangerous it is and how big the opportunities. People are struggling. We
Of
can
course.
help give them a guiding hand of what's possible, but also where you have to be careful. And I think that's a big role that we can take, and help these communities, DMOs, organizations to do the right next steps.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Well, let's leave it there, Andreas. Obviously, next gen destination marketing is our new website and our new partnership and our new initiative. And I hopefully today we just started to shed a little bit of insight into sort of I think what our vision is of kind of who we want to support and how we want to support and where we want to spend our efforts and time, and the role we think we can play there. So many more conversations to come, but thanks, Andreas. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.